John's laughing. Every time we do one of these shows, I end up spending money at Portage Bay. So not my money necessarily, other people's money, but it's still, you know.
That's the best kind of money.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I crack myself up. Here we are again. It's time for the DevCast. I have the whole crew here today. I have John, who's just returned from doing a drill with me in Portland. How are you doing, John?
Let's see. I think the drill gave me COVID, but I'm doing pretty good actually.
Yeah. You got the COVID. A lot of 5G was being used there. That's where you got the COVID. that's what that's what I hear. You know that the vaccine is really just a delivery mechanism for the nanites, right? So
I've heard that.
Yeah, right. And the booster shots, that's just a software upgrade, is what that is.
And now there's Paxlovid, so.
Oh yeah, you don't know what's coming with that. Yeah. So. Kate, good to see you. How's it going?
Just going pretty well, yeah. Getting ready for Halloween, and then I'm taking off for Europe for a little while. But
is that the thing where you're going to the conference in Belgium?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
Yep.
I am so jealous. I love the lowlands. That's great.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna fix what I broke in my other app, right? I told you, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I or maybe Jacob.
Right. I'd be like, yeah, Kate, I broke it. Broken. Well, what'd you do? Yeah, it's broken. But that's what you guys are good at, right? I break it, you fix it. Hopefully I learned something along the way. And Joe, welcome to you.
Good to be here.
And you also went to pause on error, or whatever they're calling it these days. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about that. And Zandon, I love the shirt.
I'm wearing my pause.
You're branded, right? That's great. Right. Jacob, looks like you're in a new location. Where are you at today?
No, same location, just changed my office space a little bit.
Okay.
Trying out a different space, I guess.
It looks good. You got good lighting too. So well done. That's great. And Russell, a little different view for you too. Have you gotten out of your bedroom?
I did. I'm in a new bedroom. I moved to from Stanwood to Shoreline actually. So yeah.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah.
We're practically neighbors now.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, that's awesome. We should get our own little FileMaker group together. Well, today we're going to talk about the Pause conference and what was learned, what was great, and I'm going to start with John. Tell us what Pause, or what was previously known as Pause on Air, is, why is it important, and how does it compare to Claris Engage?
Sure. Pause is billed as an, I don't know if they bill it as this literally, but I think Pause is generally considered an unconference, especially when compared to a more traditional developers conference, like FileMaker DevCon or the new Claris Engage. And the definition of an unconference, I guess the very word unconference is supposed to combat the idea of a definition, but it's a lot less focused on purely technical content and a lot less focused on jamming sessions together one after the other. So at a traditional developers conference, you might have 4 hour-long sessions a day, or 3 2-hour-long sessions a day, or whatever, and you're going from session to session, learning on different technical topics. And in the Pause conference is a lot more very specifically designed to not have as much planned content. There were really only, over the course of 2+ full days, there were really only 4 formally planned session periods during the conference, and a lot of intentionally left open time for attendees to meet on ad hoc topics, or just do meet one-on-one or in small groups for networking purposes. A lot of companies, and by a lot I mean 3 or 4, clearly using Pause as a way of bringing their team together, as more FileMaker firms are remote based firms like us. You don't have your team together very much, and so a number of firms are using Pause as a way to get their team together and meet in person a bit. So it's a different sort of conference. I know, just as an example, one of the ad hoc sessions that wasn't pre-planned was probably an hour plus long dive into transactions that were introduced in one of the recent versions of FileMaker. I think 19.6, but I could be wrong on that. And so for just gathered around a big monitor, 8 or 9 developers just kind of pounding away at doing some test transactions in FileMaker and trying to see how they behave and how to utilize them better. So really a little bit different, less planned, more quote unquote organic. So just a little less organized and formal than Claris Engage, I expect, will be. Also, Claris Engage is Claris's opportunity to really try to communicate with their developer community and their user base, and so they really try to, they want to have control over the sessions and control over the message that's being delivered, so that they can really deliver the message they want to deliver, which makes sense. It's their conference. But Pause is, since it's more user generated, more community generated, the content really is all over the board, and a lot of it's non-technical. One of the sessions I went to by Ann Keyser over at Seed Code, she did a session on personality types. So we talked about different personality types for an hour plus, and FileMaker developers, software developers in general, tend to be a certain, or at least there's a pretty standard mythology around what the typical software developer is like. And so that was an interesting opportunity to talk about that and how you can most effectively interact with people of different types, especially given whatever type you are. Interesting too to think about that. Well, I won't get into that. It was a good session. So that's a little bit about Pause.
So what is your personality type? Which model did you use?
Oh, it's that one where you rank people
ENTJ, EN.
I think that's it. She didn't use the name of the model, I don't think, but it's the whole introvert, extrovert, emotional, non-emotional,
right?
That kind of model. And myself, I think I'm, and I think any model like that's what it is a model. It's an attempt to model the real world, and by definition, it falls down and is imperfect. And as human beings, we tend to, I think, when we're looking at a model like that, we tend to attribute more accuracy to the model than is reasonable at times. So if I say I'm a somewhat non-emotional introvert, that pigeonholes me into a particular place that I think I have a lot of exceptions to. So I'm a little hesitant about models like that, but I've already said what side I probably am myself. So
yeah. I had to just text my wife because I didn't remember. I am an ENTP.
ENTP.
Can you explain that, Dan?
I can't really. It's extroverted. Yeah.
Wait a minute, you're extroverted?
Apparently. Apparently. Not always. I can rally for extroversion, and then I need time to recharge. Right? I'm like a battery. I can hold voltage for a while, and after that, off it goes. Right? So yeah. Well, that'd be interesting to do a whole personality type thing. Joe, you were there. You even rode your bike there. What was your
I
experience
did.
at Pause?
This was my third year at Pause, so I kind of knew what to expect going into it, but that's kind of why I appreciate Pause. It's different than a lot of other conferences in general. It doesn't have your typical, laid out block schedule where you have, an agenda going all the time. This one allows for space and allows for one-on-one conversations with a lot of other developers. So that's kind of, I would say that's become my favorite part of the Pause conference is really sitting down with the developers that I've interacted with in the community and seeing what they're working on, seeing how they're, what changes they're making to their workflow, just stuff like that. I really enjoy.
Was there a particular formal session that you uh, liked above the others, or really came away with something from?
Yeah, I went to the three main sessions I went to, delivering code with feature flags. That one was interesting to hear how Eric Luce, how his approach to feature flags, which feature flags are nothing new. It's basically just setting variables, global variables to turn features on and off. It's Boolean value. It's nothing nothing crazy. But how they implement it and how they've made it part of their regular deployment model is pretty cool. And then MBS plugin, I'm a big fan of MBS plugin, so I had to go and listen to Christian Smith talk about that for a while. And when you have an opportunity to see a demo from the guy that made it, like he shows some pretty cool stuff. Some features that he's building, some features that have been there for a while that not many people know about. And he even did some IoT demos, which was really cool. Like he uses fidgets as like controllers, and then was able to build a FileMaker solution to control all sorts of stuff with the fidgets. Like it was really really fun to watch.
What is a fidget?
Fidget is there is fidgets.com. They make those little USB controllers to do all sorts of stuff. So they've got, I don't know, Xanon, have you ever used fidgets at all?
Yeah.
Or is anybody else there for fidgets?
Yeah, they were fun when my kids were little. They loved playing with them. They're just sort of like Lego connecting devices that you can put together all sorts of different sensors, and they can build little sort of simple systems. You have a temperature monitor. You have like a little one that makes sound. You have all the different sensors in sort of that hobbyist robotics sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids it's super easy. You can't connect them incorrectly. And they have like, a slider switch. And so they can make little things to do simple tasks and get an understanding of how electronics sort of work. It's pretty cool.
Can you use them with Raspberry Pis?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They need a Raspberry Pi though. They're like just a circuit connection kit. So you can just stack them together. They magnetically couple, so it's super easy for little kids to get their hands on them. And that's what I want, right? I think that's what.
Yeah, and they've come a long way since then. So now you've got all sorts of different controllers for doing anything you could think of, really. So they're really fun to check out.
Guitar pedal in there. Have a guitar pedal in there where you can adjust your guitar pedal for the audio file.
Okay. Yeah. You got me thinking. That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because they'll have rheostats and different. When I was playing with the kids, they had all sorts of different.
Sure, that's cool. But yeah, so that was fun. Just seeing, all the stuff. And Christian is such a smart guy. So he's got, his big thing was if there's a feature that you want FileMaker to do, no feature is too small for him to build. So he will literally take every request and try to build it into the MBS plugin. And because of that, the library is gigantic, but pretty cool what he's able to do with this MBS plugin inside FileMaker. So we're checking out. And as a developer, it's a must-have in your toolkit. It really has changed at least how I write. It's made me more efficient. It's made me less error prone. I mean, it's a fantastic plugin. So highly recommend it.
Monkey Bread Software. What a name.
Yeah. And he even gave a story about why it's named that, and basically it's because he inherited it and inherited the name and just stayed with it. So nothing crazy. I thought there would be someone in the in attendance asked why the name, and he said, "Well, I had it, inherited it, and just stayed with it. No fun story. We're all kind of a little let down, but we get it."
Well, that's too bad. In your notes from this, it says that he did Excel file manipulation. Can you tell me a little about
Yeah,
that?
that was another demo he did where he was able to build sheets, take data out of Excel, move it into a different sheet, manipulate the data in a row and column, all from FileMaker into Excel without, just using that plugin. So there are all sorts of functions built into that plugin to do whatever you can think of with an Excel file.
Well, that is interesting. So I've gone to the website. I've pulled it up so that I can remember to go back and check it out after we're done with this.
Cool.
That seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
Zandon, you also attended, and I love the T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the conference, it's not just a conference; it's a wardrobe.
Yes. We did tie dye, and it was fun.
Oh, you made that shirt?
Yes, yeah. I made this at Pause.
Wow.
That was one of the fun things. And I think that's this is the second one I've been to. I previously went to the one in Cleveland. It was Pause on Air at that time, but it was a lot more relaxed than the DevCon or the Claris. I haven't actually been to one of the Claris conferences, but maybe it was Claris by that time. Anyway, it's fun because it's a lot mellower. And this one being at a retreat, well, it's not like when they have the big conferences in Vegas or somewhere fun, like a lot of times you can bring your family and they can stay in the hotel and you can go to the conference during the day and stuff. But then you can kind of couple it with, because you have all the expenses of touring with, getting their hotel room and that. Sometimes people do it with their family, especially if they're traveling long distances, like coming from Germany or something like that for a 2-day conference. But it's really, being at the retreat, really nice to be able to sort of be in the really relaxed setting and have great conversations, which was a whole lot different than like a conference would typically have, right? So yeah, I got to attend the first day were the pronounced ones. I got to attend a couple of really cool sessions. One on interactive 3D for FileMaker developers by Joseph Simpson. And that one was pretty cool. He was using Babylon, highlighting its advantages for applications and providing UI and doing charting and stuff. But the big takeaway for me on that one was actually he had talked about an on-DOM load feature for using the web viewer. Typically, prior to that, I'd been using, and we'd mostly been using, sort of a substitution process. So if you use Carafe Kitchen or Carafe, you have a script that writes the static text for the web page, and then you have placeholders in there for the data, kind of like you would for a Word document that you were doing. Maybe you were doing some sort of an email campaign or a letter campaign. And so basically FileMaker would go through that HTML and it would replace your placeholders with the data from FileMaker. And it's a single load static page, right? But he was talking about using on DOM load, and then there's other techniques to, after the page loads, it has a placeholder for the data, and then it makes a call to FileMaker, and for FileMaker to then return the data, and then loads dynamically into the page. And that was big for me. I really liked that. It was really super cool. And when I got back, we had a dev meeting, and we were talking about the conference, and I told Jacob about it, or I told everybody about it. And that was on Tuesday. And then on Thursday in our dev meeting, Jacob had actually gotten kind of the bug with it too. And so he found an article, and I can let him talk about that a little bit, but seed code article about callbacks that's a little bit better than the on DOM load kind of feature for loading the data into the web viewer and keeping it all in sort of a much more web app centric way or web page way using JavaScript than doing the Caraf, substitution process, which always felt kind of clunky. But yeah, I can let him dive into that a little bit better. But that was super cool, sort of putting those pieces of the puzzle together. Great takeaway. And then afterwards, like it's going to change the way I do web viewers in the future, and I'm kind of excited to try it. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but it's pretty cool. The other one was with Dale Miller, and it was change management tracking for FileMaker. So, in a lot of your solutions, in other software development, you might have experienced things like Git repository and different things that will allow you to push commits and monitor changes to anything that you do with the code. And you can roll back, roll forward, do all sorts of different branching. But FileMaker doesn't have that. So he was trying to monitor changes between files when he was working on them in FileMaker and be able to tell the difference, when he had a new change, what he needed to either annotate in documentation as changes or what he needed to update if he was doing live updates to production. And that one was pretty cool, but a big, again, small conference, pause, right? So what was fun is he was doing it in a Zoom presentation, and one of the guys, a couple of the people didn't bring their laptops, and I had mine open for the Zoom presentation. So I was sharing with the gentleman behind me who I hadn't met before, and he was sitting there quietly. And as we were talking about it, somebody threw out, FM comparison as a really cool tool that kind of does the same thing. And so I knew that we had purchased FM comparison. We'd looked at it in one of our Dev meetings a long time ago, and I kind of forgot about it. I didn't really quite understand how useful it was or anything. Anyway, I pulled it up during the meeting and quickly, pulled in the XML from a test file, and as I was like opening up and looking at it, I'm like, wow, this is super cool. Well, it turns out the guy over my shoulder who's looking at my screen with me is David Ramsey, and he actually wrote the backend code for it. And I remember, Joseph Simpson, who did the interactive 3D modeling session earlier in the day, had mentioned that he had done work on it. Well, he had done the front end UI on it. So the two developers were there, and it was pretty cool to have David over my shoulder, kind of getting seeing me excited about his software. I felt like that was super cool, but also just the tight community that you're in at this conference with sort of the ecosystem of FileMaker. And after I got back, I've started using that. And in a lot of the environments that I've been working in where you have, you're not doing deployments, you're working live in production, and you make changes in a dev environment, but you have to then ensure that you make all those changes in your live production environment. It's been a godsend. It's been an awesome piece. So Dale's presentation was great, but the FM perception was my big takeaway from that one. And now I'm using it regularly. So it was super cool.
Well, that sounds like another podcast and an action item for you guys. Get this man as a guest. Write it down. Find him. Invite him. Let's do that podcast. That'll be fun. Well, let's turn to Jacob, Steely-Eyed Missile Man. What did you do with this exciting 3D developer thing? How did you use the web viewer? Tell us a story.
It wasn't actually the 3D. It was more along the lines of JavaScript and passing data to the web viewer and then back to FileMaker. I found this cool article by Seed Code that kind of explains this callback method, and they kind of just lay it out on a basic framework, and it's a concept, right? They have a working rendition for their apps and things that they create. So they just gave you kind of a framework to follow, but you had to create your own kind of workflow for it. So I modeled after their stuff, kind of a custom way of passing data back to the web viewer via this callback method. And it basically preserves, like Xander was saying, the DOM model. So the DOM's already rendered, and you're basically passing data freely back and forth between FileMaker and the web viewer. So there's no more need to do like this substitution process or all these other steps that we had to take before. And it also like allows us to use more modern like web apps, like frameworks. And that's kind of what I was showing at the dev meeting was a Vue.js application that was basically hot loading right from FileMaker and kind of exploring this callback method. So,
what does that do for rendering speed for viewing and updating data?
Oh, it's as fast as it would take to fetch the data from FileMaker, and it happens asynchronously. So you don't have to wait for the data. The user can be using the application still, and then if there was a request to make data, data would then get populated back into the web viewer as soon as FileMaker finished fetching it. So it's almost like a live web interaction.
Yeah. Kind of like when you're using Google Maps, right? And you go to the Google Maps page, it doesn't necessarily have to have everything loaded to display the map. But if you're using FileMaker, you have to load all the data before you could display the map using the substitution process. In this, the map would display, and then it would reach out to FileMaker and grab the information. And when the data was finally available from FileMaker, it could then load the pins or whatever it was into the map. So the users in the web viewer, their interaction can start with whatever they want to do, and then the data can populate in the background. So pretty cool.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Xander, ever since you and I put together that Google map for the WorldTrack web application using Carafe Kitchen, which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Man, I've been putting maps everywhere. It's like, we can map that. Yeah, we can map that too. Let's just map it. So my wife's looking at me at like 10 o'clock in the evening. What are you doing? I'm making another map.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about Craft Kitchen and the substitution process. Single script, you can drop it in. There's other ways, but it's super easy to toss into a FileMaker solution. All the different JavaScript libraries that they have built in Craft Kitchen. So.
Well, I scrolled down to the bottom of that list. I was looking at it going, oh, well, this, the map is cool, but what else we got down there? I got down there to the bottom where they have an org chart. I'm like, yes, I have a purpose for this org chart. How do we do that? So
yeah, and you could use those still. The only difference is the you're not doing a substitution process. So a lot of those, the way that they draw are dynamic. And then when you push the data in, they'll actually like come alive, right? So the page is kind of there, it's kind of dead, and then as the data loads, like the bar charts can slide up, right, and reveal. So whereas if you just load it statically, it's like blank load. That's it. That's all you get, But if you can control it as a web page, then you get all sorts of interaction that you don't normally have. So anyway.
Okay. Well,
cool.
make a note of it, because I'm gonna be coming back to you. Give me a price. We're gonna go build that thing.
Definitely.
I have a use for it. John's laughing every time we do one of these shows. I end up spending money at Portage Bay. So not my money necessarily, other people's money, but it's still,
That's the best kind of money.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I cracked myself up. So, how about you, Kate? You didn't go to pause. Did you pick up anything as the guys came back with their notes?
I didn't make it to that dev meeting, so I was going to ask, for Jacob and Russell and me and anybody else listening out there who didn't go to pause, like, what do you think the most important piece of information you could pass on would be, or topics? I know you shared about the sessions you went to, but was there anything else that, like, somebody didn't make it, like, what would we want to know?
You've stumped them.
really good cooking
I
tips
know.
from Ronnie Rios. That was fun.
Yeah.
I talked a lot of like
Is that right?
cast iron nerds. So we had a little group session, just ad hoc session on cooking methods. So that was a lot of fun. I'm trying to think of what other. I mean,
well,
as far as
you mentioned, Ron,
stuff. That the one Xandon, the data passing is probably the thing that I'm most excited to try out. But
yeah. Well, and that's
Was
so.
anybody...
There was one other.
Oh,
yeah. We had it was a little more impromptu. Like the schedule got changed a few times, but it was on AI, right? And it was super cool. But Ronnie Rios, at the end of it, showed this awesome demo that he had made using ChatGPT API, where you could naturally talk to your FileMaker solution, and you could say, tell me about this product over this period of time or whatever, and it would show you the data, right? And you could just naturally ask FileMaker the question, and it would respond with whatever you asked, because it knows the tables. It would run a SQL query in the background, and it all had to do with preloading ChatGPT with some prompting. But then you could say, like, give that to me in a bar chart, and it would give it to you in a bar chart. So there was some really cool stuff in his demo that is astonishing, that I think we're going to see some huge impact in FileMaker coming forward. Ways of integrating AI into FileMaker, where he basically referenced the scripts in the, and I'm not sure about the term exactly, but it's sort of you preload the prompt with information about the conversation you're going to have with ChatGPT. And so he preloaded it, giving it the scripts that it has access to, the format of the JSON data that can be passed to those scripts, as well as the schema for the FileMaker solution. And given that, it's able to run the SQL queries using a FileMaker script and get the response and results, display that, and then also use this FileMaker scripts to pass JSON data back in to do whatever you want it to do. So you can talk to your FileMaker solution, really, and just say, hey, can you give me all the invoices for last month? That looks great. Could you put it in a bar chart for day over day? And I like that. Can you could really talk to it, and it is smart enough to be able to interact with whatever scripts you give it access to and push data in the formation that you want it, like whatever JSON data, whatever JSON model you give it. So it's endless, and this is just like the tip of the iceberg. So that was really exciting. I didn't want to forget about that. Yeah, Ronnie's demo was pretty cool. So definitely worth maybe in one of the Claris meetups.
So do you pass the data from FileMaker to ChatGPT in a similar way that you pass location data to Google Maps? Is that how that's working?
Yeah, there's an API, and you can actually have ChatGPT write the FileMaker script for the API integration, and then so you make an API call, and it just basically pushes the text through with some parameter and ChatGPT will give a response in an object.
You're basically training the model on your own data there, right? I mean, that you're carving out a tiny piece of ChatGPT and saying, here, I want to train you on my solution so that I can ask you prompts. I can write prompts to you to give me information back based on the way I've custom trained the model for me, right?
Yeah, exactly. So so he pulled the SQL, the way the SQL calls are made with FileMaker, because they're a little bit different than just standard SQL calls. Mostly the same, but there's some things it can't do. So he loaded that in as the structure of the SQL call for FileMaker specific. So sort of preloading it with this information, like you said, it adds it. I don't know that it adds it to its training data, but it gives it context. So
I think it has a sandboxed.
So yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my
I can
question,
understand.
because are you then giving all of your data to the world by pushing it to ChatGPT? Because if it's not
No, no,
No,
sandboxed, you wouldn't want to do it.
no.
no.
You're asking.
It
You're
keeps your
asking
data
about
sandboxed.
schema. Yeah, sorry. You could have
I
it.
mean, it keeps your
You
data
could have it.
sandboxed
You
from the
don't have
rest
to
of
sandbox.
the. I'll let
All
you do.
right, all
Xander, you
right,
go.
all right, Xander.
Sorry, all garbled. Yeah, so you're asking ChatGPT to write a SQL query, and the SQL query is running in FileMaker, and the response from FileMaker could go back to ChatGPT, and yes, it would be non-sandboxed. You could use other models like Llama, possibly. So the future is wide open, but you don't have to. FileMaker, if you have it call the script and the uh, pass in the SQL response, it can, like, you can have FileMaker contain all of the data. So I don't think that that's a huge limiting factor right out of the chute. You do have to control it a little bit different, but ChatGPT can take the structure and figure out how it needs to structure that SQL query, and then from that determine how it's going to pass the response onto the script. So it does all the heavy lifting and makes it so that you're not, so you can just talk to it or type and
It always comes
chat with
back to AI these days. John.
Oh, I was just going to say that it's my understanding ChatGPT works pretty hard to keep its training data uninfected by end user training data, so that the data you're feeding ChatGPT isn't like, you can't feed it bad training data and have it start regurgitating that to the rest of the world. It keeps its quote unquote clean training data for the models separated from the data that you train it with for your specific purposes. Xanon, does that sound right? You've worked with this more than me so far.
I think that sounds kind of, yeah, mostly right.
Yeah, and from that episode we did with Chris Ippolite, is that right? Is that his last name?
Yeah.
He was saying that you could centralize the data that you want to use for indexing for your solution and keep it separate from public access, but still use public results to build things and do other. There's kind of a fine line between what is made public and what is kept in a local environment, or in a centralized environment, secure environment, I should say. So they're probably going to need some research to figure out how that exactly all works. But I know there's a way to do it, just haven't gotten there.
Yeah, I mean, if you were feeding it a bunch of data and saying, give me the data analytics for this
right
table data, then that is definitely right, going into ChatGPT, and could conceivably be, you would have to have agreements through the software API, which I'm not familiar. That would be EULA stuff, the same as using any API. Google Maps is the same thing, right? You're passing all these waypoints to Google Maps. You have a EULA that helps sort of protect you, but you are passing data to these APIs that you use, and that data, is could always be used by their company in a not very nice way. You have a trust with all the different APIs you work with anytime you pass them data. So,
yep.
So, Xanon, have you played directly yourself with the Chat GPT API?
No, it's on my list, and I really, really, really want to do it. I just, I got to get through a couple other items on my list, and then I got to go play. Right?
I have a massive list of things I would like to try. Yeah.
Yeah. Russell, you didn't get to go either. What questions do you have for the team? What has stood out to you?
Yeah, actually, so Xanon, you were mentioning you could, with that demo, they were able to ask after you kind of train the Chat GPT with the data, you could say, like, show me this, day by day in a bar chart. Do you know where or which charting tool they're using, or is it part of the Chat GPT API, or can you select like which chart tool they use alongside with it?
Yeah, so he defined in the pre-prompt the structure of the JSON object that he needs to pass to a script that makes a FileMaker chart, bar chart. And so
Okay.
by defining that in the pre-prompt, it knows the structure, so then it can take the response that it gets from the SQL query and convert that into a JSON structure to pass into the script that generates the bar chart. And he was using FileMaker charts, but you could, once you have it in a JSON object, you can, as long as you sort of have that model as a JSON object and it's able to do that translation for you, then you could be passing it to anything that'll take a
Give it
JSON
to any
object.
API. Yeah.
Yeah, using FileMaker, Ronnie used he used a FileMaker chart, which is great. It's nice to see that integration, but you could just as easily use any JS libraries.
Yeah. We're working on, me, Joe, and Jacob are doing like a Google chart integration for a reporting for a client. And yeah, it'd be cool to try to see how the chat GPT, API could help us there, and then get it formatted to then send to the Google chart, or use even the FileMaker charting tool too, to do the visualizations.
Well, I look forward to seeing how that comes out. That's your mission, I guess.
Yeah.
Be able to do a demo for us on the next go around. Yeah. That'd be fun. Okay, well, it sounds like Pause on Air was a great thing to go to. It's been in the same location for a few years, I understand. Where is it, John?
It's at a kids' summer camp in northern Georgia, of all places. A little bit out of the way. I would, if anybody asked me, I would vote for a switch over to the West Coast next year, but I understand they're going to do it in the same location next year. But it's at a kids' camp. It's a beautiful location, especially for that time of year. The trees are starting to change color. There's a little pond, a variety of buildings, so you can have your meetings in a library. There's like sort of a tree house where we had one of the meetings. There's a lakeside little pavilion where you can schedule your meeting, so that the person who's planning the session just tells everybody, we're going to meet in the basketball court, or we're going to meet in the treehouse, and that's where everybody traipses off to go to the session. And there's a few trails, and so when you're not in a session, you can walk around, and it's really a pretty nice place to have an unconference, where you want to have a lot of places for people to meet ad hoc. But it's about 2 hours drive, more than 2.5 hour drive north of Atlanta, so it's a little bit of a chore to get to it, especially for those of us out on the West Coast. But it's a nice location.
Well, it sounds like there's an opportunity for a West Coast conference. We might call it the Dev Conference, the DevCast Conference.
The DevCast.
We should pick a location where we can both sail our boats to it, so I can just stay on chat.
I like it. I wonder how they use Camp Orkyla.
Ride my bike to that one. So
Orkyla, that's on Orcas, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
There's one on Stewart also.
No, there's no good moor. That's over there on the north side of Orcas. There's no good anchorage over there. That won't work for me. How about Rosario Resort?
There's a good airport there, though. Yeah, Rosario would be great. There's not a lot of rooms there, but that'd be a cool place to do it.
Well, I could bring at least
even more out of
boat.
Lake
Yeah.
Georgia.
Yeah. There you go. Well, let's think about that. That could be fun. Well, Kate, this isn't for Pause, but you're going to Belgium. Tell us what you're going to do when you go to Europe for FileMaker.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be speaking at that conference. So I'm working on a presentation about workflow automation. And I have a survey right now that I'm looking for people to participate in, because that's going to be part of the presentation is getting delivering the results of how people are using workflow automation, what the biggest challenges are, what we're looking for, and then I'm going to be presenting on some different techniques and how they intersect and work together. So I'll include a link to that survey too with this podcast.
That would be great. All right, so everybody listening to the podcast, take the survey. Don't be lazy. Help a girl out.
You did take it, Jacob?
I did.
Have the rest of you taken it? John?
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
All right, everybody, if you haven't taken it, go take the survey. All right, and then I guess lastly, before we close, who's going to Claris Engage next year? Who's going? Raise your hand if you're
I'll
going
be
to
there.
Claris Engage.
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, you don't know?
Yeah, we have,
Be
I'm
there.
not sure yet.
I hope so. Yeah, hopefully.
we haven't talked
was
about it a lot.
looking at
We need to do that.
biking routes to get there from Omaha, and it would take like 9 days. So I'm still debating.
Well, you rode your bike to pause. Can you? How long would it take
That
you to
was
ride?
Upgrade and get one of those
That was
electronic
3 days.
scooters.
The funny thing is, there's more climbing to get from Asheville on the route I took. There's more climbing to get from Asheville to Pause than there would be from Omaha to Austin because it's that much climbing.
Well, it is south, so it's all downhill.
It's all downhill.
All right.
Sure.
All right. You could
Dan,
ride
one more thing.
a tandem, and that way you could pick up hitchhikers along the way to provide a little more power. Matter of fact, I have a Cannondale tandem. I would be happy to sell you.
That is one option.
Well played.
Dan, while we were chatting, I looked up what ENTJ is.
Yeah.
So you're going to like this. A commander, ENTJ, is someone with extroverted, intuitive thinking and judging personality traits. They are decisive people who love momentum and accomplishment. They gather information to construct their creative visions, but rarely hesitate for long before acting on them. So there you go.
Yeah, that's me all over the place. I just do it, and then I realize I broke it. And then I come to Kate. Broke it. Well, why did you work on it in the first place? Well, because I could. Because someone was foolish enough to give me admin access to the file.
Hey, that's how you learn.
That's it.
You gotta break it and
right.
fix it and put it all
That's
together
right.
again. That's how we all learned.
Excellent. Well, that's all the time we have for the DevCast today. Thank you to everybody for taking the time to share your experience with Pause. Everyone go and take Kate's survey so that she's got the data she needs for her presentation. If you're going to book a trip down to Claris Engage, then drop us an email. Look us up. So we might even broadcast a couple of podcasts from the conference. Matter of fact, I would say let's broadcast a couple of podcasts from the conference. That would be great. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. Until next time, now get back to work.
Thank you for spending your time with us at the FileMaker DevCast today. We hope you found something useful, something thought-provoking, and something to take into your own development approach. Things that help you to be more productive and to allow you and your team to get more done in less time. Find us online at portagebay.com and filemakerdevcast.com, and also on social media at FM DevCast and Portage Bay. Let us know if we can help you or your company with modernizing your approaches and streamlining your workflow. We look forward to seeing you at the next DevCast.